Welcome to the fabulous Fabaceae, also known as the pea family, or many names, but we'll call it either Fabaceae or the pea family. Now, this is a big family. It's a family of eudicots, perhaps not as big as the Asteraceae, but there are a lot of species in here. And we have anything from annuals to perennials to trees and shrubs, so very diverse in terms of form. And of course, one of the things that holds this family together is the fruit, which is a legume. All right. And we know that is a simple pistil, all right, or one carpellate pistil that opens along two suture lines. So you can see this mature fruit here. I'm sorry, this keeps doing this with this new mouse of mine. Opens along the two lines and coils up like that when it's opened. There are some species that have indehiscent legumes, but that's fairly rare. Okay, so legume, the fruit, of course, the beans or peas are the seeds in there. And I should mention, yes, that we have many important food crops that come from this family, such as various beans and peas and soybeans, etc. So pretty important. Now, I do want to mention before going on to other characteristics that many of the pea family plants are really important in enriching the nitrogen in the environment because they have these root nodules that are filled with a kind of bacterium called a rhizobium bacterium. And what those bacteria are able to do is to take atmospheric nitrogen, that is N2, which is not usable by animals, okay, or plants or fungi, and they convert that to ammonia. And that is a form that can be used by the plants, and then the plants can incorporate into their amino acids and proteins, and then we can eat the plants and get that nitrogen. So this nitrogen fixation is extremely important, and that's why a lot of people plant, for instance, fava beans as a cover crop. And what they'll do is they'll plant those, then they'll turn that into the soil. They'll return those plants into the soil and use that as a natural fertilizer. So pretty important process. So let's talk, here we go again, about the characteristics of the family, the plants in the family. So most pea family plants have alternate leaves. That's pretty consistent, and they are generally compound. Pinnately compound, palmately compound in some cases, and occasionally they are simple leaves. We'll see one example today, but generally compound. One thing that I also want to talk about and why I put this diagram up is that they often have very obvious stipules. And in case we haven't talked about this before, a stipule, there'll be one on either side of the base of the petiole where it joins the stem. So not on top of the petiole where you'd have your axillary bud, but on either side, like here and behind here. So you always have two, one on either side. So stipules are often very prominent and easy to see in this family. So I'm not going to go in the order of the subfamilies that I did in the field botany manual. This is actually referred to at the very end of the pea family. But this is the subfamily Mimosoideae. And by the way, this is the correct spelling here. I noticed I added an extra I in the lab manual. So it's Mimosoideae, Oideae. And this is a big subfamily. There's a lot in Australia. There's acacias, is a big genus that are in this subfamily, but we don't have that many native plants in California. This is a nice one, the pink fairy duster. But this is very different from the rest of the family in that we have radial symmetry. And so when we go over the family characteristics at the beginning of the manual description, it says the symmetry can be radial to bilateral. Typically, we think of more bilateral because we're dealing mostly with the other two subfamilies, but there's a lot of variability here. The other thing, by the way, that's consistent is the superior ovary along with the legume. But this subfamily is really cool because you don't have big obvious sepals and petals, what's big and obvious and showy and attracts the pollinators are these many stamens. So radial symmetry and many stamens. And it's just really pretty. Okay. And of course, notice the highly divided leaves and not so obvious, but there's a stipule right there that on one side and of course a stipule on the other side. Now, the majority of the family, and the biggest subfamily, that's at least in California, is the Papilionoidea. Oh boy, means butterfly, basically, papillon. This is the correct spelling. It's also spelled correctly in the lab manual. So the oide endings, these are the subfamily endings, are consistent in the plant kingdom. All right, so in this subfamily, we have bilaterally symmetrical flowers. There are 5 sepals that are fused in various ways. So I'm not sure if we can actually see it in this one, but here we have sort of some of the sepals on top and then there's some going down below. You can see a little bit, but they are fused in different ways, okay? We have 5 petals too, but they're highly modified, and that's what I want to go over now. When someone says it has a P-type flower, they're talking about this type of flower here. So the first petal I want to talk about is the banner, which is the largest, and it also would be outermost when the flower is folded up in the bud. Then we have 2 petals that are coming sort of straight out of towards you, and those are wings. So you can see the 2 wings here. This is a horticultural pea. This is a lupin that we'll be looking a lot at. So the 2, there's a wing there, and you can see 2 coming straight towards you. So that's 3 of the petals, okay? And then we're going to have 2 fused petals to make what's called the keel, 2 conning petals. And you can sort of see a little bit of the keel right here. It's between the wings, so it's going straight out the front of the flower. And so I've taken the keel down. It's down here. We'll get another view of it in just a moment. Again, it's called keel because it kind of looks like the keel of a boat, or I think it actually looks like a rowboat, or canoe, excuse me, canoe. If you pull that down, then you'll see the sexual parts, because usually they're within the keel, but an insect's weight would push the keel down, and then it would get dusted by pollen on its abdomen. So in this subfamily, we're going to have 10 stamens, all right? And they're fused by their filaments into a tube that surrounds but is not fused to the pistil. Okay, so the pistil, the ovary is still superior, okay, but we have this fusion of the filaments around it. Now, there's 2 ways they can be fused. Either you can have all 10 stamens, their filaments fused together, as you do in this one, or you can have 1 separate and the other 9 fused. Okay. In this particular one, we've got 5 short and 5 longer stamens. That's often common too, but we don't have to worry about that. Okay, we want to look at the fusion. All right, let's talk about a really important genus in California in this subfamily, and it's the genus Lupinus, which is the lupins. And loop refers to wolf, and they named it this because they thought it robbed the soil of nutrients, but of course it's actually the reverse because of the rhizobium bacteria. One of the real obvious ways of recognizing this genus is that the leaves are palmately compound, as you see right here in the right hand picture. And you can also see in this picture too. So palmately compound leaves, the number of leaflets differs in different species. We have a nice raceme inflorescence in this genus also. A lot of beautiful wildflowers are in this genus. And let's use this again to look a little bit more at the structure. Here's sepals fused down here, and this was actually the upper lip of the fused sepals. It's not always in 2 lips, okay? There's the banner that's folded back, a wing, and a keel in between. And here you can see the keel a little bit better, okay? So banner, wing, one wing behind with the keel in front. And when you're identifying two species, it's actually not that simple to identify these two species, even though they're beautiful big flowers. One of the things you're often asked to look at is either the top or the bottom of the keel, to see, are there cilia, short hairs? And are they over towards the base or towards the tip, or are there none? So you're often looking at that. And lupinus, as I said in that first diagram or first picture, excuse me, has all 10 stamens fused by their filaments. And I remember when I first came to California, I shouldn't admit this, but being from Ohio and working also in Michigan, I was used to always that 9 fused plus 1 separate. And I was starting to talk about that, and I realized I had a lupin in my hand, and it's like, whoa, wait, this doesn't fit that pattern. You can have either in here. Um, I just love this patterning that you can see on oftentimes on the wings, although it's never mentioned in any identification books that I've seen. And it's really tiny too. All right, and we do have 5 long and 5 short stamens. Not such an important point, but that's, you probably will notice that. And there's our nice superior ovary that's probably already developing into a legume fruit. Okay, so that's that big subfamily, and we're mostly going to be working in that subfamily, but there is one real prominent species in the third subfamily, the Caesalpinioideae. Okay, now the spelling, I'm sorry I got one of those wrong in the field botany manual, but I always remember Caesalpini and then the oidee ending, whether it's papilionoidea or mimosoidea, but here it's Caesalpini and then the oidee. Hopefully that'll help you remember that. Okay, so here we have a little bit more variability in the flower structure. In the subfamily, you can have more or less radial symmetry. This one's for more or less radial, to obvious bilateral symmetry. And this one, the sepal fusion varies. It's fused at least the base. And the sexual parts, unlike the papilionoidea, are not necessarily hidden in the keel. You can see in this left one, there's no keel there. So you've got the stamens out in view in the pistil. We have usually 10 stamens. And there's some nice plants in here that are native to California, like the blue palo verde. That's in Southern California. But up here in Northern California, we have our lovely Western redbud. And that's why we're even learning this subfamily. And so let's look at the Western redbud, or Cercis occidentalis. And one of the things that you can see is it's woody. Okay, it is a tree or a shrub. Okay, but it's tree sized. And the flowers come out before the leaves. Now the leaves, you can sort of see here, are heart-shaped. A fancy way of saying that is cordate. Sometimes they say it's kidney-shaped, reniform if you want to use that. But the leaves are deciduous. Okay, so it's a deciduous tree. The flowers come out first, and then the leaves follow a little bit later. Somewhat close up of the flowers. We have a little bit different structure. Where's that big banner? We don't have that big banner. So if you compare the two, one of the things that's real obvious in Cercis is total fusion of the sepals. You have this big structure at the base, complete fusion of the sepals, the 5 sepals. And instead of having a big banner, here's this tiny little banner that is actually innermost in the bud, with the 2 wings sort of above it on either side. So the wings would be outermost in the bud. You have a very small banner. And then you have the 2 petals of the keel are not actually fused. So these are unfused petals. All right, so I have a little bit more of this shown for you. And there's the unfused petals. It sort of adheres to the petal on the other side, but they're not connate. And if you lift one petal up, then you have the 10 stamens, which notice they are not fused by their filaments either. And I don't know, I went overboard in taking pictures of this because it's so pretty. But there you can see there's the superior ovary of this one pistil. And I, for some reason, got a close-up of the stigma also. So there you have the fabulous Fabaceae, and we will be identifying a lot of plants in this family.